welcome to the stage Navy veteran Gary Bossy.
Thank you. For those of you that are able, please stand with me to sing our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to our flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. By the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, we are a great nation. We're going to continue to be that through the leadership of President Trump and our soon-to-be Vice President, J.D. Vance. May God bless. May God bless the USA.
Welcome to the stage Jessica Pranger from America's Got Talent. Welcome to the stage State Senator for Michigan's 30th District, Mark Huizinga.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today. It's my honor and privilege to serve as a senator for this 30th district right here in Marne. I grew up on a small farm not far from here in Walker, and I'm a husband of one and the father of three, 2 kids, 2 married, 1 serving in the United States Marine Corps. Last week, we had the privilege of welcoming former President Donald Trump to Walker, where I previously served as mayor. I'm sure many of you were there, and if you were there, you probably felt the same level of intense patriotism and enthusiasm for our country that I did. Each and every one of your votes count. I won my last election by only 405 votes. And let me tell you why elections matter so much. Yes, I won by 405 votes, but we lost the majority in the Senate. Elections have consequences, and now we live in an environment completely controlled by the Democrats. Our governor is a Democrat, our Attorney General is a Democrat, our Secretary of State is a Democrat, the Michigan House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats, and the Michigan Senate is controlled by Democrats. But just by a margin of 2 seats, 20 to 18 for the first time in 40 years. The Democrats have rolled us for the past 2 years with massive consequences. They've repealed the right to work, they've repealed prevailing wage, they've increased income tax, they've initiated solar siting, which takes away our rights that local governments have, and they rob from Peter to pay Paul, squandering your hardworking taxpayer dollars. That's Michigan. And as bad as it is in Michigan, we've seen even worse trends nationally. Under Democrat leadership of Biden and Harris, our country is more broken than ever. The number one thing I hear from my constituents is that it's the economy, stupid. Gas prices are too high. Food is too high. Rent is too high. This country was built on immigrants, and my grandparents immigrated, and I'll bet many years did too. But they did it the right way, the legal way. The Biden-Harris administration has opened our border to everyone. Their policy for the border is broken. The weak, failed, dangerously liberal administration can only be fixed in one way. Vote Republican. I remember a sign I saw on a bus when I was a kid. It was about 1980 and Ronald Reagan was running for office. It said, "Vote Republican for a change." And that was a moment for me that I reflected upon. I said, that's it. We need to change. We need to be part of this solution. This is your chance. You know how important this election is, or you wouldn't be here to cheer on our next Vice President, J.D. Vance. Let me tell you, Senator Vance knocked it out of the park at the debate last night, and I cannot wait to see conservative. Thank you for being here.
Welcome to the stage, State Senator for Michigan's 31st District, Roger Victory.
Wow! What a crowd of good Republican folks here today. What a day of God's creation. Boy, give thanks to Him for this beautiful weather we're having here. Amen. Amen. They said, State Senator Roger Victory, but I'm better known in this community as Farmer Raj. So I'll keep it real simple to the point. But another thing is, when we live in a good community like this, people get together and make things happen. And I see the DeWitt family right here. DeWitts, please stand up. Stand up. This is their facility. They worked hard to, thank you. That is West Michigan values right there. And that's why we're here today, to hear J.D. Vance speak of those values. And I'll tell you what, last night or yesterday afternoon, the Tigers, they knocked it out of the park, and so did J.D. Woo! Now, I did do, and you know what? The Tigers are winning right now, too. Go Tigers! Go J.D., go Trump. That's a winning trifecta right there. But with that there, as a farmer, I saw some wonderful signs coming in here. And I read those signs, and it was Rural America for Trump. What an amazing story. That's the community I see right here today. Farmers, ranchers, but also rural communities, those hardworking auto workers, those unionized workers, our hardworking men and women, might be in the medical field, you name it, they are living in our rural communities, our hometown communities, and they know what they need. They need to get this country back on track, and who's going to put that back on the rails? President Trump and J.D. Vance. And, as a farmer, at times, we get in those coffee shops and we can talk and talk and talk. But I'm going to leave a little meat on the bones for our good congressman coming up there. But I'm just going to leave it with this here. My last name is Victory. So, victory for Trump and victory for J.D. Thank you, everybody, and have a great time.
Please welcome to the stage U.S. Congressman John Molinar.
Thank you. Well, hello, West Michigan. It's great to see everyone today, and appreciate your patience. I know you've been out here a long time, but it's going to be worth the wait, isn't it? I just have a few questions for you. Last night at the debate, how many of you think Tim Walz won? Okay. How about J.D. Vance? My name's John Molinar, and I represent the 2nd Congressional District in this beautiful state of Michigan. And I am proud to endorse and support and help in any way I can the Trump-Vance ticket. Are you with me? You know, sometimes people, I talk with people and you find out what's on people's minds. And when I talk with people, inflation, the cost of gas, the cost of groceries, heating our homes, having a mortgage, rent, all those costs have gone up under the Biden-Harris team. Who do you think would be better to handle lowering inflation, Trump or Harris? I agree with you. And the other thing I hear a lot is, people are concerned about the illegal immigration, people coming across our border, drugs, the fentanyl problem, you think of the human trafficking, you think of the crime that's being committed, violent crime. And, I know Kamala's the border czar, but who do you think would be better able to secure our border? Yeah, the two biggest issues that we are facing as a country. And I want to add a third, because right now we have a strategic competition in the world with the Chinese Communist Party. And they are aggressively undermining our institutions. They have a spy balloon flying across America. They've had these police stations designed to spy and intimidate the Chinese diaspora. They have, university collaborations where they're stealing our technology and using it for defense purposes. They're becoming more aggressive at home and abroad. They're even buying American farmland. Are you aware of that? They're buying our farmland in places like in Big Rapids, which is in my district, where they're buying farmland and they want to put a Chinese battery plant that is affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. And, the challenge here is that our governor and our Democrats in the state legislature are supporting that with your taxpayer dollars. And you probably all know that in Washington, D.C., the Biden-Harris team wants to use your federal taxpayer dollars to support these efforts to the tune of billions of dollars. And I got a question for you. Who do you think is better able to protect your taxpayer dollars from going to fund the Chinese Communist Party? Trump or Harris? We have a lot at stake in this election. It's not hype to say that we have to rescue our republic. When you think of the foundation of our country, the benefits that we've had as a free nation, the love that we have for this country is really on the line in this election. And sometimes people, say, well, it doesn't really matter, vote Republican or Democrat. I think in the debate last night, you saw a very stark difference on the issues. And I thought J.D. Vance did outstanding. Would you agree with me on that? I was so proud of him. He was so articulate, so well-spoken, and he was going basically 3 against 1. I don't know if you noticed, but the moderators really weren't too balanced. And the way he handled that with grace and truth, to me, was a tremendous example for our party and for our country. And I think he's going to make an outstanding vice president. We've got a little over a month until Election Day, but it's election month. And, we need you to get out and vote as soon as you can. And we need to make sure you're getting friends, neighbors. Sometimes people say, well, I'll vote if I have time, or I don't, it's not a big difference between the two parties. It's very clear that we need to have the voters that maybe vote in one election, miss an election. We need to make sure they get out. And they're your friends, they're your family, they're your neighbors, they're the people you go to church with. And right now, in the next 30 days, we have the opportunity to make the case the case that J.D. Vance made so clearly last night of why we need to elect Donald Trump as the 47th president, and let's make America great once again. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Michigan GOP Chairman Pete Hoekstra.
Hey folks, after last night, is there any doubt we are going to win? And I know it's the great people of West Michigan, and especially Ottawa County, that are going to push us over the top here in the state of Michigan. Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for everything that you will do over the next 33 days. You know, it's kind of nice. We go from one great event to another. 3 events with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance last week. 3 more events this week. We had RFK stop by for a couple of events. Michigan's important, and so are you. And it's all about the future of America. You know, we had a really great contrast last night. JD could go out and speak with confidence and say, if Donald Trump is our next president, the good times will roll. Economy will come back. We will protect American jobs. The border will be secure. And the chaos that we see on the world scene will go away. Yeah, I just came over with JD from the other side of the state. We had a great event there. I told him, hey, this is home country for me. This is the home field. Let's make sure that when JD comes out in a few minutes, we give him the warmest West Michigan welcome, the warmest welcome he will see at any time during this campaign season. All right? And I can tell you, I've been at a number of events with JD. The people he really likes to hear from are the folks right back there. So, you know, when he comes out and when he gives you a good applause line, he needs to hear you, and he'll just kind of, he'll be looking here and he'll be speaking, he'll hear you, and he'll just kind of turn around and just stare in amazement and, what is this behind me? So that is the challenge. How many times can you get him to stop and turn around and acknowledge the folks behind you? He sees these folks, but he needs to be reminded that there are people behind him. All right? Hey, let's have a great night. Let's welcome J.D. Vance, and let's have a great 33 days so that we can have 4 great years of making America and Michigan great again. Thanks.
best. You can be the King Kong banging on your chest.
You could beat the world, you could beat the war. You can talk to God, go banging on his door.
You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks.
You could be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you go find yourself.
Standing in the Hall of Fame, and the world's gonna know your name. Cause you burn with the first flame. And the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. You can go the distance, you can run the mile. You can walk straight through hell with a smile.
You could be the hero, you could get the gold. Breaking all the records they thought never could be broke.
Yeah, do it for your people, do it for your pride. Ain't you ever gonna know if you never even try?
Do it for your country, do it for your name. Cause there's gonna be a day when you're
Standing in the Hall of Fame, and the world's gonna know your name. Cause you burn with the first flame. And the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be a champion. Be a champion. Be a champion. Be a champion. The walls of the Hall of Fame. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions, be truth seekers. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers, Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions. Standing in the Hall of Fame. And the world's gonna know your name. Cause you burn with the first flame. And the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be the greatest, you can be the best. You can be the King Kong banging on your chest.
You could be a hero, you could be the war. You could talk to God, go banging on his door.
You
a lot of people feel like the American dream is further and further away. That if you work hard and play by the rules, it's a little bit harder to get ahead. It's a little bit harder to support a family, a little bit harder to buy a home. The world I grew up in was one where I think for the first time really in American history, my parents' generation did not expect their children to necessarily have a better life than they did. And you saw that in all kinds of different ways, but there was this sense growing up in Middletown in the 1990s that a lot of people didn't expect the future to be better than the past, and that's a really unique and a really tragic thing. Jobs started to disappear from that community, drugs started to move in, hopelessness started to move in, and so a lot of people who really knew that the future would be better than the past actually found a world that was a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging. I wrote Hillbilly Elegy because I wanted to give people a sense of what it was like to live in a community like mine. I didn't think a whole lot of stories were told about white working class Americans. I didn't think a lot of stories were told about people who were struggling with some of the problems we were struggling with, joblessness, drug addiction, and so forth. And I thought that I could tell a story that would make people understand my family a little bit better, and maybe in the process, understand the struggles of a lot of families. I come from the places that I want to represent, and what we need is to stop sending people that are of the DC swamp. We need to send people who are of the places they aim to represent. I want to fight for the people that I come from.
The American media has been laundering foreign disinformation. It is disgusting. Instead of talking about the crises in our country, they try to silence the people who are experiencing them. Who do you want answering the phone? Do you want a person who hides from the friendly American media, or do you want a person who takes a bullet to the head and stands up and says, fight, fight, fight? Kamala Harris, you ought to have respect enough for your own people to enforce their border laws and listen to them. Listen to them when they complain about it. Don't pretend they're bad people. We're not bad people for loving this country. You're a bad person for doing this to the country in the first place.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Senator J.D. Vance.
Wow. Well, we've got a hell of a crowd. We've got a hell of a crowd in the state of Michigan. Are we ready to turn this state red and take the country back? Yes, we are. Now, it's a beautiful fall day in the state of Michigan, and I hate to say it, as a Buckeye, you guys have got one of the most beautiful states in the union. I'm a little jealous of you on this fine October day. But we have got an opportunity here in the state of Michigan to elect Donald Trump, the next President of the United States, elect Mike Rogers, the next Senator from the great state of Michigan, take this country back and give the nation the leadership it deserves, and it's going to start right here with the people in this rally and the people in the great state of Michigan. Now, we've got some fantastic people. We've got some fantastic leaders in the state of Michigan. I want to give a shout out just to a few of the folks who are joining us before we really get started. We've got, and I'd ask you to raise your hand and stand up, Congressman John Molinar. Where's John at? John, thank you so much, man, for your leadership. Thanks for being here. We've got a great state senator, Mark Huizenga. Did I pronounce that right, Mark? Huizenga. Mark Huizenga, thank you so much for being here, Mark. We've got State Senator Roger Victory. Roger, thank you so much. That's an easier name to pronounce. And we've got the great Michigan GOP Chair, Pete Hoekstra. Pete, thank you so much. Now, I joke with Pete, he's going to get sick of seeing me. He said, well, I'll see you next week. And I said, Pete, I'll probably see you in like 3 days. Because what we've got an opportunity to do here in the state of Michigan is to drive home the message that this is a great American manufacturing state. Michiganders build things with their hands. They make things with their hands, and Donald Trump and I are ready to lead a great American manufacturing renaissance. We got to make more in America. We got to do it with the hands of Michigan workers. Now, I don't know if you saw yesterday, but we had a pretty fun debate in New York City. Did you guys watch the debate? We had a little fun. Now, I have to confess, though, I feel a little bit of sympathy. I feel bad for Governor Tim Walz. Some of you clearly don't. But here's what I said to the governor last night is he has got actually the toughest job in American politics. And in some ways, I've got the easiest job in American politics. Because all I've got to do is remind the American people that just 4 short years ago, we had rising take-home pay, we had lower inflation, we had a secure border, and we had it thanks to the leadership of Donald J. Trump. That's an easy message to get out there to the American people. Now, Governor Walz, by contrast, think about it. He's got to get out there every single day and try to convince people that Kamala Harris, who has caused the problems that we see in this country for the last 3.5 years, is somehow going to do something different than what she's done over the last 3 years. That's a tough job. You know, I never worked in sales myself, but it's always good when you work in sales to have a good product to sell. And unfortunately for Tim Walz, he has got the crappiest product to sell in the entire United States of America. Because let's just recap this. Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote on trillions of dollars of spending that we couldn't afford, printing money that we didn't have, and driving the cost of inflation through the roof. That was thanks to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris went to war on the American energy industry, driving the cost of fuel and gas and everything else through the roof. Kamala Harris was the border czar. Don't let the media lie to you. They bragged about her being the border czar for 3 years during the worst open border in the history of the United States of America. And Kamala Harris, by Joe Biden's own admission, was the last person in the room during some of the most disastrous foreign policy decisions in the history of this country. So we ought to feel a little bit bad for Governor Tim Walz, and we ought to feel a little bit grateful to Donald Trump for giving us great leadership, because we've got a hell of a product to sell. It's peace and prosperity, and we're going to bring it back to the American people. Now, a lot of you know my story. I've actually got my 4-year-old is here campaigning with us, and we're having a lot of fun. Now, of course, right behind us, we've got this great motor speedway, and I'll say that I don't know if y'all saw. You probably couldn't see because we've got these semi-trucks everywhere, but the Secret Service took us on a little run around the race car track. That was pretty fun. Pretty fun for the 4-year-old, though I will say, and I love these Secret Service guys. They're doing a good job, but man, they drive like they're driving Miss Daisy. I do not think that we got close to 28 miles per hour out there on a racetrack. My 4-year-old is raising hell in the back seat. He's like, Daddy, aren't we on a racetrack? And I'm like, yeah, I thought so. But, you know, it drives home how much we have a great tradition of driving and of sportsmanship and of building the vehicles that have made this country go for a century in the state of Michigan. That's an incredible thing to be proud of. But you know what we have done over this country the last 3.5 years? We've got a vice president who has declared war on the Michigan auto industry and has said that she wants to force everybody to drive an electric vehicle. Is that a good deal for the state of Michigan? Now, it's not only that she wants to make everybody drive an electric vehicle, she wants to tax all of you so that she can give rich people money to buy cars that were manufactured in China. It's the worst. And this is why I say Governor Tim Walz has got to sell the worst product in America, because I think Michigan auto workers would join me in saying we need to build our own cars and Americans can drive whatever the hell they want to, because this is the United States of America and we believe in freedom. And if you want to drive an electric vehicle, by all means, drive an electric vehicle. If you want to drive a truck, drive a truck. If you want to drive a gas-powered car, drive a gas-powered car. We think that an economy where Americans can choose whatever works the best for their families is an economy that's going to produce prosperity for our workers and lower prices for our consumers. The Kamala Harris record, we've got to remember, Michigan families are paying about $1,000 more per month thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Think about that. You gotta spend $12,000 more every single year just to afford the things that you could have afforded when Donald Trump was president. That's a disgrace, by the way, and that's an insult to American families. And as a person who was raised by a grandmother who sometimes, my friends, struggled to, she would forego paying medical bills so that she could put a nice meal on the table for me and my sister. I know, and I know we got a lot of great grandparents out there, and we're thankful to you, and we love you. But when Kamala Harris pursues policies that have grocery prices 25% higher than they were 3 years ago, it's people like our grandparents who are struggling to pay those grocery bills. I remember when my grandmother, and I know it gets awfully cold in winter in Michigan, a lot colder than it does in the state of Ohio. And I remember that there were times when my grandmother would choose not to turn on the heat because she couldn't afford it. And I happen to believe, and I know Donald Trump believes, that this is the richest and most prosperous country in the world. If you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to turn your heat on in the middle of a cold winter night. But I know there are a lot of American families who are going to forego, who are going to sacrifice on the basics because of the inflation of Kamala Harris. And I know there are a lot of Americans who are watching on TV or going to see some of these clips later. And I just want to say, I think I speak for every single person at this rally, that if you work hard and play by the rules, Donald Trump and I are going to fight for an economy where you can provide for your family however you see fit. That is the American dream. Work hard and play by the rules, you get a good life in this country, and that's what we're going to fight for every single day. And we got to be honest about the fact Because their idea is that if you're enforcing the border, somehow that's not compassionate. And there is no bigger lie in this country told by Kamala Harris and her media allies. A border enforcement is the most compassionate thing that we can do. It's true for people south of the border, and most importantly, it's true for American citizens who deserve to be able to build a life in the community that all of us love. Now think about this. When they talk a lot about child separation, did you know that we have about 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has just lost? We don't know where they are. Some of them we know have been sex trafficked by these terrible Mexican drug cartels. Some of them we know have been used as drug mules by those drug cartels. 320,000 American children. 320,000 illegal alien children. We don't hold anything against them, of course, but the fact that Kamala Harris has opened the border has made those children prey to the most disgusting predators that exist anywhere in the world, and that's those evil Mexican drug cartels. So every time somebody tells you that it is compassionate to open the border, tell them about those 320,000 missing children. Every time Kamala Harris tells you that it's compassionate to open the border, tell them that you'd like to live in communities where your fellow Americans aren't dying of fentanyl overdoses. Tell Kamala Harris that the compassionate thing is to close the border. It's to re-elect Donald Trump and bring border security and sanity back to the United States of America. And here's the other thing about Kamala Harris that I can't believe. We have never had in the history of this country a candidate. She talks a lot about threats to democracy. Can you believe the shamelessness of this person to talk about threats to democracy when she is running for president without earning a single Democratic primary vote? I'd say that's a threat to democracy. I'd say it's a threat to democracy when you're running for president, but you're hiding in a basement from the American people and refusing to do any interviews. Now, after I give a few more remarks, we're going to open up the floor to the reporters to ask some questions. And I'm sure they'll ask some tough questions, but it's important. Whether you're talking about hostile media or friendly media, it is important if you want to be the president and vice president of the United States to go out there and earn the American people's votes, not expect it to be given to you. That's the Kamala Harris approach, and we reject it. So, now I will say that if you ever watch Kamala Harris's interviews, there's been like 3 of them that she's done the whole campaign. You realize why she doesn't ever give these interviews to begin with. Because she'll stand up there and they'll say, what is your specific plan for lowering the price of groceries and lowering the price of housing? And Kamala Harris will say something like, well, did you know I grew up in a middle-class family? I used to mow the lawn. We had a very pretty lawn. Just go on and on about something that has nothing to do with their actual plans and policies for the American people. Or they'll say, you know, Kamala Harris, the world was much more stable and peaceful when Donald Trump was president. Now we have a new war breaking out seemingly in every continent. What is your plan to bring back peace and stability to the world? And she'll say, you know, when I was a teenager, I worked at McDonald's and I was very good at making the hash browns. And any person with a lick of common sense is watching and saying, well, okay, but what the hell does that have to do with bringing peace and stability back to the world? Now, here's a plan that I would propose to Kamala Harris. And I mean this in good faith, Kamala. If you'd like to bring peace and stability back to the world, I recommend you vote for Donald J. Trump for president because he's already done it and he's going to do it again. If you'd like to deliver rising take-home pay and low inflation, you might consider sending a donation to Donald J. Trump, Kamala Harris, because he already did those things and he's got a plan to do it again. And if you, because Kamala, she's got religion in the last few months. Remember, for the last 3 years, Kamala Harris has been going around saying the border is secure. And now all of a sudden she's got religion. She accepts that we have a border crisis and she promises that she's going to take care of that border. Well, Kamala, you are the sitting Vice President of the United States. If you'd like to secure the border, why don't you start right now? Not talk about what you're going to do. Start doing it right now. The American people, she's got the office of Vice President of the United States. I would appreciate if she did something with it rather than talk about what she's going to do if the American people give her a promotion. And that's maybe the most shameless thing. You know, my friends, I've only been in politics for 2 years. So maybe if I'd been a career politician like Kamala Harris, I would be shameless enough to do what she does, which is stand in front of the American people and say, on day one, I'm going to make everything better. You hear her say this? On day one, she'll say, we're going to make groceries more affordable. On day one, she'll say, we're going to secure that southern border. And every one of us is sitting there saying, Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing that whole time? Her whole campaign is about gaslighting the American people and pretending that she is nowhere near the seat of power when she is the sitting Vice President of the United States. She talks about wanting change. Well, I agree, Kamala Harris. That's something that we agree on, and the best way to deliver change for the American people is to get back to the common sense leadership of Donald Trump and to stay the hell away from Kamala Harris and her broken policies. Now, Kamala knows, of course, that she cannot win running on what she's actually done, because what she's actually done has been a disaster. You look at every poll will tell you the country, we know that we're on the wrong track. I think we've got the greatest country in the history of the world. The only thing we got to fix about it is the broken leadership. So here's what she'll do. She will lie and gaslight. She'll pretend she had nothing to do with anything, even though she's been the sitting vice president for 3.5 years. And if that doesn't work out, she's got a backup plan. And that backup plan is censorship. Now, I was asked earlier today, how do you bring a divided country back together? And I actually don't think it's that complicated. Because, yeah, Americans, we disagree with each other on a whole host of issues, but we've always disagreed with each other on a lot of issues. We've always had intense political disagreements in this country. What is new about 2024 is that we have got Kamala Harris, who is promising not to persuade her fellow citizens, but to censor them, to silence them, and to shut them up. So if we want to bring back common sense to American politics and we want to bring back American unity, here's my message to Kamala Harris. Stop trying to silence your fellow citizens. Get out there and persuade them for a change, and get out there and make your case to the American people. And I think this is actually the biggest reason why Donald Trump has built the biggest, most diverse tent in the history of the Republican Party. Think about this. Think about the list of people who have endorsed Donald Trump in this election. You've got, from the right side of the spectrum, you've got Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador. You've got, of course, me and Donald Trump on a team with Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy. Now, isn't that an amazing thing? And I think the reason, I don't just think that, I actually talked to Bobby Kennedy earlier today. One of the biggest reasons why Bobby Kennedy endorsed Donald Trump is because Donald Trump is the candidate of the First Amendment. He's the candidate of free speech. He is not the candidate of censorship like Kamala Harris. Now, you can go through all of these issues. You go back to the COVID situation of a few years ago. They were trying to kick people off social media for suggesting that it was stupid to make 3-year-olds wear masks at preschools. Remember, that was misinformation, and your own government was trying to censor you. We can go back to any number of issues. There are a lot of people who believe that we ought to speak our minds in the United States of America. We're sick of being told what to think and what to say, and we are the party of free speech and First Amendment principles. And I'm proud of that maybe more than anything else. Because if you don't believe in the First Amendment, nothing else makes sense in the United States of America. If we can't debate and disagree with our fellow citizens, then we do not have the most fundamental rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. And so if you're watching from home and you're a Democrat or you're an independent and you believe that the solution to America's ills is for us to debate with one another and come to some common sense solutions, you are welcome in Donald J. Trump's Republican Party. You're welcome with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and everybody else, because we believe in protecting your right to speak your mind, and we're going to fight for that every single day of Donald Trump's next administration. And here, the last thing I'll say about this, then I'll take some questions. The most disgraceful form of censorship that you see in the country in 2024 is when Kamala Harris calls the citizens of her own country, she calls them racist for daring to say that her wide open border is a disgrace. And I think of all the things that Kamala Harris has done, this is the worst. Because it is a fundamental right of this country that when we think Kamala Harris is doing a bad job, we have the right to say so. When we see Kamala Harris flooding our communities with fentanyl, we have the right to say so. When we see Kamala Harris allowing 320,000 children to go missing, we have the right to say so. Kamala Harris, I have a suggestion. Stop trying to silence your fellow citizens. Get out there and persuade them and do your damn job. That's a much better solution to the problems that plague this country. And so on that note, and I want to say at the very end, after I take some questions, I want to talk a little bit about our Get Out the Vote efforts. But on that note, let's open up the floor to some of our journalists. We're going to take questions, and I'd like to start with the local journalists first because the national folks get to see me all the time. But local journalists, please ask a question if you've got one. I think we're passing around a microphone back there. But ask about anything because, again, Donald Trump and I believe we ought to earn your vote, and part of that is answering tough questions.
Hi there, Senator Vance. My name is Julia Gorman, reporter for WZZM in Grand Rapids. This is your fifth stop specifically to West Michigan, our side of the state. Just wondering if you can elaborate on why you continue to come back to our area and advocate for your campaign.
Well, because I love this part of the state. I love the state of Michigan. And frankly, I feel maybe if I come when it's a little warmer, I won't have to come so much when it's really cold. No, we're going to be here. Look, we're going to be here every week, probably me or President Trump until the election, because this is such an important part of our state. And and obviously these folks agree. But look, one of the things I love about this area is that it exemplifies a proud American spirit of craftsmanship, of making things with your hands, of doing things extraordinarily well, and being proud in building a great American product. And one of the things that happened in my hometown is that we decided that we didn't need to make things in the United States of America anymore. That was a bipartisan decision. It was a bad decision, and the steel mill that employed my grandfather for 40 years went from about 10,000 employees to about 2,000 employees, and it was one of the lucky ones because a lot of those steel mills completely disappeared. I believe that if we've got smart public policies, I believe that if we're drill, baby, drilling, if we're investing in American energy resources and American workers, if we're penalizing companies that are shipping jobs overseas and rewarding the workers and businesses that are building things right here in the United States of America, Michigan is going to lead a great American manufacturing renaissance, and I want to carry that message to all corners of the state, but especially to Grand Rapids. And so my message to folks in Western Michigan, but frankly my message to everybody in the state of Michigan is we can build things in this country again like we've never done before. We can employ middle-class American workers doing it, and we're going to make our country so much more self-sufficient and so much more powerful when we make more in America, do it with the hands of Michigan workers, and produce broad-based prosperity for our people. We can get back to it. We just got to have smarter leadership.
Hello, Senator
Sir.
Vance. Hi, Senator Vance. Thank you for your time. I'm Matt.
Good to see you.
Matt Whitco's from Fox 17. I appreciate you taking the time to answer this question. We obviously hear your message and Trump's message, former President Trump's message on election integrity. What do you say to both the Republicans and Democrats who are the township clerks, the city clerks, the county clerks, and state clerks who are saying they are providing a secure and fair election?
Well, what I would say to them is that part of the reason that people are skeptical of our elections is, frankly, a lot of national policymakers not doing their job. So let me give you an example. Just last week, we had a broadly popular piece of legislation called the SAVE Act, which would have made it harder for illegal aliens to vote in American elections. And I actually think to all of the county clerks and all of the people who are working hard to make sure that we have free and fair elections in this country, they are not well served when Democrats block a common sense piece of legislation that secures American elections and makes sure that American voters are the only people voting in American elections. Isn't that common sense? Isn't that what everybody should want? And so when I talk to local elections officials, a lot of times what they'll tell me is they want the federal government to act to make our elections more secure because they want people to have faith in the work that they're doing. Folks, a lot of them, and I wish you would say thank you to them if you meet them. There are a lot of poll workers out there that are working hard to keep our elections safe and secure. We ought to say thank you to these folks, but we also ought to recognize that their federal government, led by Kamala Harris, seems to want to make it easier for illegal aliens to vote. Donald Trump and I want to make it harder for illegal aliens to vote and easier for American citizens to vote.
Hi, Senator Vance. Good evening. Arpa Robo with the Detroit Free Press. You've spoken at length about the importance of the manufacturing industry and the auto industry to Michigan. Here in Ottawa County and in West Michigan, agriculture is another big industry. And a lot of local farms rely on migrant workers with permits to staff their farms during the summer. I know you've spoken about the importance and the priority your and President Trump's administration would have on day one to secure the border for illegal crossings. What would be the administration's plan to ensure that farms in Michigan and everywhere throughout the country would still be able to have adequate workforces come harvest season?
Well, look, if you're a legal resident of this country, whether your family's been here for 10 generations or one generation, we want you to work, we want you to provide for your family, and we want you to be able to live the American dream. And I talk to a lot of farmers, not just in the state of Michigan, but all over our country. And our farmers believe in border security almost as much as any other group of people. They recognize that Kamala Harris's open border has got to stop. We've got to secure our border and prioritize American citizens and how we administer our immigration laws. Now, you're right, of course, a lot of farmers rely on a whole host of diverse labor pools, but they ought to rely on people who have the legal right to be here in this country. It's very, very simple. And again, I think there's this idea out there that somehow American farmers support Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. That is absolutely not true. American farmers want a secure southern border. They want access to be able to export what they're producing all over the country. They want low energy prices. They want the policies of Donald J. Trump, and in 33 days, that's exactly what we're going to give them.
Hello, Senator Vance. Princess Jeanne Steverson with News Channel 3 in Kalamazoo. I wanted to get your reaction on how you feel about President Joe Biden has been handling the Israel attack that happened yesterday.
Well, I don't know that Joe Biden knows where he is, and so I don't know what I think about Joe Biden's response to the Israel situation, because, look, this is the biggest scandal, I think, in American politics in a generation. That for 3.5 years, the American people have been saddled with a president who clearly doesn't have the abilities to do the job. It's sad, but it's also something that should anger Americans, because who went out on television and lied to them and told them that Joe Biden could do the job? Kamala Harris, and it is a disgrace. And because of it, we are in the midst of a major conflict, and America doesn't have a president who can do the job. That is Kamala Harris's fault, and the American media should not let her get away with lying to the American people. If Joe Biden can do the job, as Kamala Harris said he could, then why can't he even run for the job to begin with? It is a disgrace, and it gives lie to her entire dishonesty about his fitness to serve. I mean, look, my attitude on this is very simple. And it's funny. I didn't notice this last night at the debate, but they said, what do you think about Israel launching a preemptive strike? And then it occurred to me today, well, hell, the Iranians just launched 180 ballistic missiles. That's not a preemptive strike when you strike back. That is responding to an aggressive attack, and Israel ought to have the right to do whatever it thinks it needs to do to secure its own security. And ma'am, I think one of the weirdest things about the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris approach to this issue is they say on the one hand, they want to minimize civilian casualties and they want to get the war over as soon as possible. And then on the other hand, they make it harder for the Israelis to use the precision-guided weapons that will allow them to destroy the bad guys and actually save those innocent civilian lives. Their policy doesn't make an ounce of sense, and we got to remember, this would have never happened if Donald J. Trump was the president of the United States. You didn't have terrorist organizations launching these disgusting attacks. You didn't have one country invading its neighbors because Donald Trump was strong and Donald Trump was smart. And that strength and that intelligent diplomacy kept the world at peace. It was an amazing thing. For my entire life, pretty much every single American president has gotten America involved in some newfangled military conflict. The one exception, the one time where you didn't have an American president getting involved in some foreign conflict was the 4 years of Donald Trump's steady leadership, and we've got to get back to it in this country. And ma'am, we'll make this the last question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, Senator Vance. I'm Sarah Leach. I'm from the Detroit News. The Biden administration awarded a $500 million grant to GM to convert an existing Cadillac car plant to an electric vehicle plant. Will a new Trump administration honor this for GM or pull back?
Well, ma'am, first of all, the $500 million grant came along with some really ridiculous strings and no protections for American jobs not getting shipped to foreign countries. Because a lot of not just the cars themselves, but the battery components, the minerals, this stuff is all produced in China. And so when we write massive checks on American taxpayer expense to these companies, a lot of times what we're doing is selling American middle-class jobs to the communist Chinese, and we ought to be doing exactly the opposite. We ought to be rebuilding the American middle class and investing in our own workers, not shipping our tax dollars off to electric vehicles made in China. Now, here's the problem with forcing people to buy electric vehicles and then subsidizing, again, a lot of those subsidies go to China. But even if you assume that a lot of them stayed in America, which they don't, the issue is people don't want to be forced to drive electric vehicles. And so if you don't have the demand for those cars, what you end up doing is destroying the American auto industry and all of the good jobs, union and non-union alike, that depend on that industry. So GM, I believe, just announced that it was laying off something like 1,500 workers. Stellantis announced that it was laying off 2,500 workers. These companies are still shipping their factories to Mexico or closing down the factories altogether because Americans don't want to buy so many electric vehicles. So the way to promote Michigan auto workers is to allow them to make the cars that Americans actually want to buy. Empower Americans, empower Michigan auto workers, and that's how you guarantee prosperity for Michigan auto workers and everybody else. This thing, I mean, we can go on and on about this, but We go on and on about this, but I talk to a lot of senior leadership of various American car manufacturers. You know, I talk to the leaders of Ford. I talk to the leaders of other car makers too. And you know what they tell me? That the electric vehicles are sitting on the lot for 4 or 5 times longer than the gas-powered cars. So when we force all of these auto manufacturers to produce cars that people don't want, we destroy Michigan auto workers' jobs and we destroy Michigan prosperity. What Donald Trump and I want to do is empower people to drive the cars that they want to drive and empower Michigan auto workers to make what the American people want. They're better at it than anybody. We just need to let them do their job and promote their prosperity, not destroy it and ship it off to China. Now, let me just close with this, and I'm sorry we got to leave, we got to hit the road here, but it's been really, really fun to be here with you this evening. I'm going to be back a lot. You're probably going to get sick of me because you see me so much here in Western Michigan. I appreciate that. But look, here's the thing. We are not going to win this race unless we get out there and vote, and if we do, we are going to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. It is that simple. It is so simple. Now, you see the president talk a lot about this. He'll say, Harry, get off the couch. We're going to get off the couch and actually go and vote. So there's a website I want to encourage you all to go to. It's called swampthevote.com. Swampthevote.com. You can do a few things there. Check your registration. Check your polling place. And also find out all the ways that you can vote. Because look, I'm one of these guys who I wish that we had election day, not election season. But we are where we are. And I talked to a lot of people who would love to vote on election day, but something came up. So the way to guard against that is, if you're able, vote early, vote by mail, take advantage of what's out there for you, because if the Democrats are taking advantage of all these avenues of voting and Republicans aren't, we're not going to win this election. So here's the thing. I talked to a colleague of mine, and when he talks to crowds like this, he'll say, I want you to get out there and I want you to vote 10 times. And everybody gets a little uncomfortable because, we're Republicans. We only vote once. We do things the right way. Here's the way to vote 10 times legally. Get yourself to the polls and get 9 friends and family to join you. That's how we vote 10 times the legal way. And look, my friends, I really do believe. I look at the polls. I look at the energy on the ground. I feel so confident that we are going to win this race and make Donald Trump the next president of the United States. But we're never going to have the media. We're never going to have the Democrats telling the truth. But what we do have is the power of the people. So we've got 33 days. Get out there. Knock on every door, make every phone call, get your neighbors to the polls, and let's get out there and give the American people the president they deserve. Give them Donald J. Trump, and let's get common sense leadership back in the White House. God bless you all. Thank you for having me, and thanks for all the hard work. Thank you.